So here we are making our way through the Jewish way, but I think we should bless first. I know we're expecting a few more people, so hopefully we'll see them soon. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign over time and space, who makes us holy with your commandments, commands us to engage in the study of Torah. So we turn this engagement towards reflections on the Jewish holidays and living the Jewish holidays. Today is an interesting holiday called Lag BaOmer. So let's move the first slide. So long, Rabbi Greenberg. Nice to see you again. Everybody see the slides okay? Perfect. So the title of this class is Lag BaOmer, Lifting the Sadness. So before we go any further, let's just sort of get a baseline of understanding. Firstly, what Lag BaOmer stands for. You can tell me what you know, you can guess. And why is lifting the sadness an interesting way of capturing the essence of Lag BaOmer? Now, don't jump all in at once. Devorah, yes.
Okay. It's the 33rd day of the Omer. There was a pestilence, a plague on Rabbi Akiva.
Yes.
Students, because they had misbehaved toward each other. And the plague stopped on the 33rd day of the Omer, which I think is it 19th of ER, whatever. Anyway, and
we are in ER, and you know, I should have looked that up. Who can look up what day of the Omer it is? Sorry, it's 19th. It's the 33rd day of the Omer. I didn't mean that. What day of ER is it?
17.
I'm so far from being a rookie. This is like an embarrassing moment.
The 18th of
ER.
Yes. What day of the Omer?
17th.
17th.
17th. The 19th, 18th.
ER. It's not the 17th day of the Omer. It's the 33rd day.
So the 17th of ER.
Hey, don't try this at home. I've got this. I'm a professional. Okay. What day of ER is it? 17?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Glad we organized that and clarified that. I've kind of given away the answer to Lag BaOmer. It is the 33rd day of the Omer. Lag is kind of a numerical word. Lamed and Gimel make Lag. Lamed is 30. Gimel's 3. 30 plus 3 is 33. Even I can figure that out. So Lag BaOmer is the 33rd day of the Omer, and it is based on this concept of lifting the sadness. Devorah tells us that Akiva's students were misbehaving, possibly towards one another, and there was pestilence, a famine, and on the 33rd day of the Omer, whatever caused this pestilence or famine lifted, and with it, the sadness dissipated. Any other thoughts about lifting the sadness? It's okay if you don't know. We'll sort it out as we go forward.
Isn't it also because it's between leaving Egypt and arriving at Mount Sinai?
Okay.
And that it was a tough time for the Israelites because they were on a journey and they've never done this before, and it's hard.
We definitely understand Lag BaOmer to be on the journey to Sinai. In fact, this section, which is a very tiny section of material that Rabbi Greenberg focuses upon, this is part of the Shavuot section. This is part of the journey. Lag BaOmer is part of the journey we call Sefirat Ha-Omer. that we count the Omer as we make our way to Sinai. Now, one thing we learn is that possibly God sent manna from heaven to our ancestors on their way in the desert on the 33rd day of the Omer, on Lag BaOmer.
That was the first one?
Right.
The first time?
So in a sense, on that day, the anxiety of not knowing what they were going to eat, they knew that God would provide from this day forward. Now, by the way, it's 33 days. What they were eating before, they might have been very hungry that day.
They'd probably just about eaten all their provisions that they had taken with them when they left Egypt.
Right. So, true. I don't know how they would have possibly gotten all that stuff out of Egypt so quickly, but, you know, we have talented ancestors. Let's move the slide. And we know that we translate Lag BaOmer as the 33rd day of the Omer. And we'll continue. In some ways, Lag BaOmer is a conversation about Sefirat Omer in general. So the first part of our conversation today will reflect on the importance of Sefirat Omer and what that means in general as we make our way to Sinai. So, firstly, we count the Omer as a way of organizing our approach, right? The Omer is like a measure of grain. Does anybody know what kind of grain?
Wheat.
Sorry?
Wheat.
No.
I can hazard a guess.
Go for it.
So, historically, grain from Egypt was referred to as corn, but it's not corn like we think of it, like maize. It's closer to like a farro or a barley. It's a harder grain.
Yes.
Barley.
Well, I'm sure some might think it a contribution of wheat, which makes sense, more common. Barley is the choice. So the Omer is a measure of barley, and this barley was brought as a sacrifice to the ancient temple. And ever since Sinai, we have been reenacting this journey from the Exodus, from liberation in Egypt, from slavery, to Sinai, where we do what? Receive the Torah.
Right.
Matan Torah.
Right.
So this measure of grain becomes symbolic of the contributions that we have to make to ourselves, to our communities, to life in general, in anticipation of receiving the Torah. Midot, by the way, are measures or measurements. Isn't that interesting? We're doing the Sefirat Omer project and preparing for the reenactment of Sinai. And each day we bring the equivalent of an Omer offering, a barley offering, in the form of a midah, which is a measure of virtue, a measure of morality, a measure of ethical behavior. Counting the Omer in anticipation of Sinai, Rabbi Greenberg says, like anticipating a birthday. Ever count down to your birthday?
Mm-hmm.
Child, maybe?
Lately.
It's like, no, I don't want to count down. I want to add days. I don't want my birthday to come too soon. Well, he likens this excitement, this enthusiasm for Matan Torah and standing at Sinai with a big birthday party of the Torah. And the excitement and the counting is very much like a child counting with excitement and anticipation for their birthday. To your point, Devorah, the Sefirat Omer really captures this journey from Egypt, Yetziat Mitzrayim, to not only Cherut, to our freedom, but to Matan Torah, receiving the Torah, living out its virtues, pressing its mitzvot upon our hearts, really living up to what Cherut means, essentially to have the mitzvot, to have the wisdom of God imprinted, impressed on our hearts.
So Rabbi?
Yes.
Why is it supposed to be like a time of deprivation? I mean, because you don't do weddings. You can do weddings on Lag BaOmer, but you can't do weddings between Passover and Shavuot. Why is it so, I don't know, depressing?
Well, so, and we'll get to this.
Oh, okay.
But I will just say here that the early conception of the Sefirat Omer, the period, the 7 weeks, was a lot more joyous, a lot happier. When Lag BaOmer really came into vogue in the Talmud, it was a much different reality. It was, in fact, a period of mourning, which we'll get to in a little while. And so Lag BaOmer became a respite from that mourning, a little island in time that enabled us to do things we do not do when we are mourning. What are some things we don't do when we are mourning?
We don't get married. We don't have parties.
We don't have big celebrations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, not that we've had a bar mitzvah recently in a normative fashion, but some families, not usually on the more liberal side of Judaism, but very traditional families will mute, in a sense. They will slow down, they will calm, they will not go full bore in celebration during the Omer because of the mourning practices, as if they were mourning their own relatives.
It's interesting. I never noticed that.
What are some other things that people don't do when they're mourning?
Cut their hair.
Don't cut hair, don't shave. So on Lag BaOmer, you have people getting married, you have people getting their haircuts, you have people shaving beards if they have them.
But not this year.
Right. So,
I don't know if this is super germane, but I think it's an interesting point of synchronicity that in the biblical era, time, whatever, at this point in time in history, the Egyptians and the Greeks actually used barley as a pregnancy test. So a woman would soak kernels of barley in her urine and then plant them. Mm-hmm. And about a month later, if the plant sprouted, she was pregnant.
Is that right?
It is right. And there's some biochemical science behind that. But yeah.
That is really interesting. That is really interesting. So,
because the barley takes longer to mature if she's not pregnant, it'll take longer to sprout. If it only takes 33 days, she's pregnant.
Bear with me 1 sec. I'll be right back.
It's a long test, Cassandra.
As usual, Cassandra, I'm always interested in what command of.
My random factoids.
Well, no, I mean, it's just like really, it adds a lot of richness. I tease, but I tease from a place of admiration.
All right, I'm blushing now. I'm going to.
Well, it's great. So, what do you imagine the mathematics of the Omer to be here?
7 times 7.
Well, look, I mean, on a certain level, we just got through this in Parshat Ha-Omer. The pilgrimage festivals, like the High Holy Days, like Shabbat, they're all ordained or appointed times. And so things are supposed to happen at a certain time. So Passover happens at a certain time, and then 7 weeks or 50 days later, Shavuot happens. And so we have the number 49, right, which is a function of 7
times 7
weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Each of which are 7 days. What is the power of 7?
Shabbat.
Okay. And Shabbat, in a sense, is ultimately the kind of perfect creation of the collection of created objects or created things, created animals, created realities. Shabbat there's a certain perfection in 7. It's Shabbat. Shabbat's like a wedding between God and people. A wedding is a reflection of a certain perfection and wholeness in the world. So when we take the number 7 and we think about it, not only on a weekly basis, but we multiply it out by 7, we come up with 49. And the counting of the Omer, Sefirat Ha-Omer, is 49 days to prepare our souls to reenact Sinai, to prepare our souls to receive the Torah. Don't you think it would be good if we did our best to really cleanse and perfect our souls to the extent possible? Would lead us or leave us much more open to the power of Torah, much more impressionable. Literally, want our hearts like clay to be impressed upon by the wisdom of Torah. So each day we count towards this greater sense of wholeness. It's a very interesting and powerful concept. Now, if we take this concept and add to it a Kabbalistic perspective, then we get into the 7 Sefirot of God, and each of the days of the Omer gives us a chance to think about these Sefirot. And there's like 7 aspects of each of the 7 Sefirot. And each day we offer a kavanah about each Sefirot. In our community, when we count the Omer, when we do Sefirat Ha-Omer, our Sefirat Ha-Omer project, to the extent that we've completed reflections or kavanot on the various midot that we're studying on the way to Sinai, as we build our virtual toolboxes, our kavanot tend to focus more on midot, but they could very well focus on these Sefirot. Regardless, whether we're focusing on these Sefirot, these aspects of God, or we're thinking about midot, measures of morality and virtue, we are preparing ourselves for that impressionable moment at Sinai. Last but not least, the Sefirat Ha-Omer, in a Talmudic sense, as we've mentioned already, marks a mourning period. So let's dive into that a little more fully. Okay, so what do we know about Rabbi Akiva?
We learn about how he was killed on Yom Kippur.
Firstly, about when did Akiva live?
68.
Right, so he was born in the 1st century, right in the middle of it, 50
Yeah.
CE. And he was a tremendous scholar. Do we know anything specifically about Akiva that makes him so interesting as a scholar? I think he started learning like at age 40.
Was he a student of Rabbi Ezekiel or?
Yeah, I don't know.
No, not Devorah, help. You know what I'm so in the Talmud, when they're talking about the story of the oven that gets dismantled and then
Right.
God, they call on God. Rabbi Akiva, the rabbi who's saying, no, like this is what the Torah says. I think Rabbi Akiva is his student.
Yeah, maybe somebody should look up to whom Rabbi Akiva was a disciple. On the spot here, I'm not drumming it up. But he's a first century
Rabbi Eliezer.
Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, so Akiva came to his work as a rabbi and came to the study of Torah at the age of 40. So adult onset learner, really a wonderful role model for all of us who are a little nervous or shy about jumping into Jewish learning. There's, in a sense, it's never too late. So Akiva is an important sage, and he collaborates with Bar Kokhba, right, who obviously lives around the same time. And Bar Kokhba is famous for what?
The rebellion.
For rebellion. Against whom?
The Romans?
Against Rome.
Yeah. Oh, good. I was right.
What is Rome doing to make things difficult for our ancestors?
They can't read Torah. They can't study. They can't do anything.
Nothing can be done in public. It's awful. So,
isn't it why we say the Baruch Shem Kavod in the Shema, we say the second line because it says Melech HaOlam, and that would bother. Well, that would bother the Romans if they heard them saying that, so they whispered it.
Right.
Because Caesar was the supreme ruler of the.
Incidentally, we did not have to deny ourselves the riches of the prophetic traditions. That we could do.
Yeah.
But Akiva has his academy. Akiva presses on. He becomes arrested ultimately for teaching Torah in public. And he's executed in Caesarea. They burn him to death.
I thought he was flayed.
According to my notes here,
he was burned to death, and like they put something on his, put like wet cloth on his chest so his heart would burn slower or something.
Yeah, it's really awful.
Yeah.
But he evoked the Shema, as his final words, and as a result of this terrible treatment of Akiva, and in conjunction with Bar Kokhba's rebellion, he's had enough of this abuse, and he fights back in a way, right? Akiva chooses to study through it. Bar Kokhba bears arms, he's going to fight back.
Right.
Akiva dies, and a plague follows. Not because his disciples, in fact, were misbehaving toward one another. Plague came because this is just an awful outcome for everyone. And I think I think this was a punishment for all people. And Akiva, those mourning Akiva, got caught up in it. It says a plague broke out among his followers during the period of the counting of the Omer. It ended suddenly on Lag BaOmer.
And according to one of the things, he had 24,000 students and they all died. And he started over and had 5 who became important leaders later.
So a couple of important facts. So we have to be careful about the timing of this.
Yeah.
For example, Bar Kokhba and Akiva led an uprising against Rome.
Yep.
132 to 135 CE. So he would have been he would have been a lot older, right? If he was born in 50 of the Common Era, he would have been in his 80s. So this plague that followed the death of Akiva is said to have killed between 12,000 and 24,000 people. It broke out right around Pesach and suddenly ceased on the 18th of ER, making the moment a moment of great rejoicing. I ordinarily wouldn't rejoice with such abandon.
Rabbi?
It was so incredible that people celebrated. Yes, Deborah.
I have a slightly different version on that. It says the students died, all 24,000. Rabbi Akiva did not. He continued and started over with 5 students. And the 5 students were, hold on a second, I had them just a second. Wait a minute. Oh, here they are. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Nehemiah, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Okay. So they and that was his second cohort of students. The 24,000 he and the saying the feeling is that most rabbis, leaders would have given up if all 24,000 of your students were killed. You'd just walk away. He said, no.
Yeah.
I'm going to start over. And
no, I get it. I get it. You know, I mean, Martin Luther King, as an analogy, right? Didn't march from Selma fully the first time, right?
Yeah, I had to do it again.
Concerned about too much bloodshed, too many injuries.
Yeah.
They needed more support, needed more momentum, more cover. And so he prevented greater danger to those marching with him that first go, holding off for a while. So in Rabbi Akiva and in Bar Kokhba, we have 2 ways of dealing with Roman oppression. Bar Kokhba decides to do what?
Revolt.
Revolt, to fight back militarily. Akiva decides that he's going to deal with the situation by
going into hiding.
Well, actually, it's Shimon Bar Yochai who goes into hiding.
You're right.
That's another way of dealing with it. But we have 3 ways, right? Akiva says, look, I'm going to study Torah. Take my chances. If I die, I die. This is what I do. So he put his life on the line through the study of Torah, and it was a form of revolt. Bar Kokhba practiced a form of a revolt, but much more physically and violently. Shimon Bar Yochai, also contemporary, revolts, but nobody knows, right? Because he's under the radar.
Yeah.
So the Romans sought to wipe out everybody in the Jewish community. They forbade us from studying Torah. And so Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son didn't want to blatantly study Torah, didn't want to bear arms, as it were. So they went and hid in a cave. And they studied in secret. And by the way, do you know why we have bows and arrows during Lag BaOmer as part of the custom of the Lag BaOmer experience?
Actually, now they use water cannons.
Okay.
The water gun things. But because of the fighting?
Well, in part, having a bow and arrow is useful if you're confronted and need to protect yourself. But do you think if you saw somebody with their bow and arrow and their hunting gear on, you think that they would be going to find their hidden teacher for some Torah study?
No, you think they'd be going hunting.
Yeah, it was disguise. It was a disguise. Now, it's also said, interestingly, that the bow is significant of the keshet, or the rainbow. And apparently there was not a rainbow for the 13 years or so that Shimon Bar Yochai and his son were hidden in the cave. There's some really interesting aspects here, personalities.
Yeah.
Undergirding the Lag BaOmer story. Incidentally, when Shimon Bar Yochai died, which was up on Meron, which is a mountain in Israel. Those of you who have been before, Meron is near Sfat. In fact, from the old city of Sfat, you can look out into the horizon and see Mount Meron. And so Shimon Bar Yochai, when he died, didn't want his disciples to mourn his loss. They wanted them to celebrate his loss. And so that is why on Mount Meron, at the Beit Midrash, connected with Shimon Bar Yochai, people will go and celebrate with bonfires. And actually throughout Israel, people are celebrating with bonfires, even to the point where they're getting in trouble for doing so, for not practicing physical distancing. So let's move the slide. So 3 responses in review to the Roman edict forbidding Talmud Torah. People could go along with the Roman edict and give up the study of Torah. They could try to rally the people to fight the Romans. They could go into hiding to be able to continue to study and teach. Let's go back for a second.
All right.
So obviously, Akiva probably didn't want to be captured, but got caught. So unfortunately, somehow his study, not designed to be too public, was made public, and he was punished. Bar Kokhba tried to rally the people to fight the Romans, and Shimon Bar Yochai went into hiding to continue to study and teach, and was successful ultimately in remaining hidden. Tell me what category you would find yourself. Can you answer that question?
At my age, I would go with number 1 and do it in secret.
Okay. All right. So kind of put on like you're giving it up, but kind of like a converso.
Exactly. That was what I was thinking of.
Take it underground.
Wait,
Yeah.
number 1 or number 3?
1 or 3?
No, I wouldn't go into hiding. I'd stay where I was and do it in my own private space.
I mean,
I'm
going
not going
to hiding is like, it's like true witness protection. I mean, you're out of the situation.
Exactly.
Because
You're like gone. Nobody knows where you are. They don't even know if you're alive.
Don't take your cell phone.
Okay. Anybody would join the fight?
I'm too old. I'd slow you down.
Seems too dangerous. All right, let's move forward. So we've talked about the various aspects of Lag BaOmer, the various customs. So why do you think we think of Lag BaOmer as a scholar's day?
Because they went into hiding.
Well, wouldn't you, in the spirit of freedom, go out of your way to be very public and very celebratory of Talmud Torah? I mean, Lag BaOmer, every holiday celebrates Talmud Torah in some shape, way, or form.
Right?
But Lag BaOmer, although it is a minor holiday, has this very important impact, seems to me, in that it really steps into that context where we are not allowed to study Torah for fear of our lives, fear for our lives. If we study Torah, we will die. So now that that threat is gone, we have this great opportunity to truly celebrate our scholars and the Torah they studied.
Correct.
Often in private, often in fear of being caught. Having this celebratory Scholars' Day is one way that we lift the veil of mourning. Sorry for the typo. I should say lift the veil of mourning. So what a terrible outcome, right? That Akiva and his disciples are slaughtered at such heavy numbers because they want to study Torah. And thank goodness for Shimon Bar Yochai, who in hiding is able to perpetuate Torah and to live to tell the tale. And so we have a wonderful experience during Lag BaOmer as a way of lifting the veil of mourning. And we celebrate not only with Scholars' Day and remembering our sages like Akiva of blessed memory and Shimon Bar Yochai of blessed memory and the bravery of Bar Kokhba, but we also have picnics and we have bonfires, games, right? Bows and arrows, not for real.
Yeah.
But I think Lag BaOmer is like the archer's holiday. All right, let's move the slide.
does the day ever get shifted if it lands on Shabbat?
Wait, say again.
Does the day, because you don't get married on Shabbat,
Right?
you wouldn't cut your hair on Shabbat because that's work. So does it ever get shifted because if it lands on Shabbat itself?
That's an interesting question. Shabbat
can't.
Trump Lag BaOmer. If it fell on a Shabbat would rule.
Yeah.
You know the only thing that Shabbat doesn't cancel out?
Yom Kippur.
Okay, well, Yom Kippur is sort of Shabbat Shabbaton. So every holiday, every like festival, for example,
Mm-hmm.
The Yamim Noraim has a bit of Shabbat in them, right?
Yeah.
Supposed to work, supposed to rest. It's a complete day of rest. It's a day of assembly. By the way, I need to plug my computer in. It's running out of gas. I'll be right back.
Go ahead.
I thought Yom Kippur, though, couldn't start on Saturday night and go into Sunday. So.
Yes, that is true.
That's why I'm not sure if the Omer, if Lag BaOmer would be on. I'm trying to look it up.
Oh, you don't think Lag BaOmer would ever be on a Shabbat?
Yeah, I'm looking.
The truth is, I don't know for sure. What I'm kind of confused about is how you would avoid that. But,
because you know how we add an extra, sometimes we have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh and sometimes we don't.
okay.
That kind of manipulation, I don't know.
Interesting. Let's go back to the other slide. Just want to introduce the Zohar, which is often associated with.
This is not the other slide you meant. You meant the other slide.
Yeah, the other slide.
Okay.
Bear with me one sec. So the Zohar is often attributed to Shimon Bar Yochai. He's brought up in it, and so people assume that he is the probable author. It is probably more the case that the Zohar was written in the 13th century by a Spanish sage named Moshe de Leon. Anyway, it's written in Yiddish and, did I say Yiddish? I meant Aramaic.
Yeah.
And it's a commentary on the Torah. And the Zohar means light. And so there's sort of this vivid imagery regarding God and human beings and their relationship. The Zohar tells us that Rabbi Shimon saw himself as a Butzina Kadisha. Butzina Kadisha is like a holy candle. I'm bringing that.
Here regarding Lag BaOmer and Shabbat.
Say again.
I have an answer regarding Lag BaOmer and Shabbat.
Yes,
if we're correct. It is mathematically impossible for Lag BaOmer to fall on Shabbat
I kind of thought
because of the way that the calendar is constructed, it falls on the same day of the week as Purim, and because Purim can't fall on Shabbat, Lag BaOmer can't fall on Shabbat.
Well, there you go.
Interesting.
I'm glad to know that. I didn't know that before.
Thank you, Sandra. That was a gut check.
Actually, I didn't think about it, but I'm glad to know now. Which means then you can have fun things like bonfires.
Yep.
And picnics, and you can go climbing the mountain. You can have mini Olympics, so you can go out and do archery.
And apparently, for some reason, water cannons have taken off in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv for Lag BaOmer.
So, reading from the Zohar. Rabbi Shimon said, "All my life I've been begging to reveal this secret. And up until today," I think somebody's trying to get in. Let's see. Okay, it looks like it's Linda. Hang on. I'm sorry. Back to the Zohar. All my life I've been begging to reveal this secret, and up until today my request has been turned down. But today I received permission. I decree that this day does not turn into the night like any ordinary day. This day belongs to me as I begin to reveal the secrets. Rabbi Shimon sat down, engaging in the divine Torah. Rabbi Abba sat down in front of him and took notes. A fire burned around him, and the sun did not set. He revealed hidden Torah secrets from the Kabbalah until he reached the verse. For there the Eternal commanded the blessing, life forever. Rabbi Abba said, our teacher had not finished enunciating the word chaim, life, when his words began to become increasingly imperceptible. Throughout the day, a fire burned in the house, and no one could come near him because he was engulfed by light and fire.
Oops.
So, right. I mean, it sounds a little scary, but not to worry. We can look at this more in a mystical, spiritual sense. But I do think you see the essence of the importance of light, the healing essence of light in the Zohar, that Shimon Bar Yochai saw himself as a Butzina Kadisha, a holy candle. And this is why we engage on Lag BaOmer in celebrating Shimon Bar Yochai with bonfires, building these holy candles, building these engulfing fires of light, or these engulfing lights of fire. I love learning about minor holidays that actually convey major meaning. I don't think there's any Jewish holiday, major or minor, that doesn't convey profound meaning. The thing is, we spend a lot of time thinking about Yom Kippur. We spend a lot of time practicing Shabbat. We understand the power of Pesach. But here's this beautiful spiritual moment of Lag BaOmer. Now, Lag BaOmer is not sacred time. There are things that we do to create sacred moments within Lag BaOmer. Right,
Are there any blessings?
It's not ordained like a day of rest. So this, by the way, might be the clue, thinking about it, duh. If you're going to kindle fire on Lag BaOmer, right, it's impossible that it would fall on Shabbat, because you could never make the bonfires. I never answered my question before about why or what sort of trumps Shabbat?
Is it Brit Milah?
Brit Milah. Right.
Yep.
Brit Milah is supposed to fall on Shabbat, even Yom Kippur. It happens no matter what.
But not a delayed Brit Milah. Only
Well,
the eighth.
delayed Brit Milah because of some kind of health issue.
Yeah.
So, interesting backstory. Our son Jared was born 5 weeks early.
Oh my goodness.
Earned him a full week in the NICU. It was very nerve-wracking, but also put in peril an on-time bris, which he had done by the Moyo. Was a physician in the hospital, his pediatrician. So we were thinking, oh, wow, we're going to have to delay the bris because he's not healthy enough to deal with it. But he managed. All 5'10" of him now. He was really five. He was only 5.5 pounds. It's interesting that yes, we will delay a Brit Milah if the baby's not healthy. But otherwise, 8th day, Shabbat, Yom Kippur, doesn't matter.
I know a kid who had his Brit Milah on Yom Kippur, and he knows about it. And his mother told me the best thing about it, she didn't have to feed anybody.
All right. There you go. Like, oh, hey, I'll take that.
You know?
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it either.
That was the one upside to this Pesach. It was the fastest cleanup of any Seder ever in the history of my life.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Not a ton of cleanup. So the other thing that trumps Shabbat is Pikuach Nefesh.
Mm-hmm.
Does everybody know what Pikuach Nefesh is?
Saving a soul.
Right. So there's a great story about a rabbi and a disciple walking towards Shabbat services. They're a little behind schedule, worried about being late, and they chance upon a young person who's fallen into a ditch and is injured, and their life is threatened. And So the rabbi just jumps in the hole and rescues the person, starts schlepping that person to the hospital. And the younger person's not engaging with a broader perspective of the moment, saying, "Oh my God, Rabbi, why are we doing this? You know, we're going to be late, etc." And the rabbi admonishes the young person, you know, essentially, God will wait while we're taking care of this person who might die in the ditch. That is not what Shabbat is all about. All right, let's move forward. Almost done.
Backward, but right.
Okay. So we get to this final major question for today. Questions. In what ways does the celebration of Lag BaOmer serve as a reminder of the need to maintain a balance between painful memories and joyous celebration? It's really only one. Well, let's look at Scholars Day as an example. Right, on Scholars Day, we're going to take an opportunity to remember at least two scholars, Akiva on one hand, Shimon Bar Yochai on the other. Akiva was a brave soul. He stood up for the dignity of his people. He studied Torah as a way of fueling that effort to protect the dignity of his people. He died on the stake with the Shema on his lips. And he's an important person to remember. The challenge, of course, is that his loss was not only profound in its own right, but it was associated with thousands and thousands of others dying at the hands of a plague, or more specifically, the Romans. By the way, I hope that's clear. You know, some people think that the plague itself was the Roman occupation. And so we hope that we take a moment to remember the true loss, the true tragedy that preceded Lag BaOmer. But it's not Tisha B'Av, right? Tisha B'Av is really all about mourning these destructive moments in our history. Less so the Holocaust. The Shoah has its own holy day, Yom HaShoah. But if it's all about mourning, then it's hard to think about living. So Lag BaOmer is a really interesting confluence between life and death, creating balance between painful memory and joyous celebration. On one hand, we have Akiva and the sadness and the abundance of loss. On the other, we have the clever invisibility of Shimon Bar Yochai and the ability to sustain Torah, much that the Torah became an Or HaTorah, light of Torah. For him, for his disciples, allow them to celebrate amidst the darkness. And even in his dying, he becomes that Butzina, Kadisha, that holy candle, engulfed in these spiritual and warm and life-affirming flames. We're called to both. So how do you deal with both? But to create a balance. We're going to remember Akiva. We're going to remember those who perish. We're going to remember the Roman occupation. But that's not all. We're going to balance it out with remembrances of Shimon Bar Yochai, remembrances of the bravery of Bar Kokhba and Akiva, the connection with nature, power of light, standing on a mountaintop, thinking of God as light, thinking of our lives as light. These are all functions of celebration. Remember, we're making our way towards Sinai like a big birthday party, We're anticipating that birthday cake with a lot of lights on it. Lag BaOmer really gets us focused, gets us serious, because we know the implications of living in a world of Torah and put our lives on the line as a result. But it can also redeem us, draw us near to God, make us a better and more powerful collective force for good. And so with the seriousness comes also a certain celebration of the opportunities that come with living this life of Torah, and the freedom to live it publicly and without hassle, without lethal engagement from oppressive sorts like the Romans. So Lag BaOmer is a really beautiful holiday. So I thought, in honor of Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer, we would count the Omer. So doing it off the top of my head, we pray. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al Sefirat Ha-Omer. Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign over time and space, who makes us holy with commandments, commands us to count the Omer. And today we observe day 33, Lag BaOmer, and that is 4 weeks and 5 days. That makes sense? Thank you much, everybody. Have a glorious day. We'll see you soon. Hitraot.
Thank you.
Hitraot, everybody.
Take good care.
Okay.